The Silent Cry. The deep space research vessel Serenity's path drifted silently through the void, its elegant bioluminescent hull pulsing with soft blue patterns that resembled flowing water. Dr. Kesh Veltar pressed his delicate six-fingered hands against the observation deck's transparent wall, watching the distant stars with growing concern. His lavender skin, marked with intricate silver lines that indicated his scientific rank among the Zelani, shimmered with anxiety patterns his people couldn't control. The ship carried 75,000 refugees from his dying homeworld of Zephyria Prime. Their sun had begun its final collapse, forcing the entire Zelani civilization to abandon the only world they had ever known. For a species that had never experienced conflict, war, or even serious disagreement in over 3 millennia, the evacuation had been traumatic enough. Now, 3 months into their journey to the promised sanctuary world of New Haven, everything was going catastrophically wrong. Dr. Veltar, came the melodic voice of Navigator Lice from behind him. The quantum resonance chamber is failing. Chief Architect Nora estimates we have perhaps 6 hours before complete system collapse. Kesh turned slowly, his large gentle eyes reflecting the soft lighting of the ship's corridors. The Zelani had evolved on a world where the harshest weather was a gentle rainfall, where the most dangerous creature was a butterfly-like being that might accidentally bump into you while dancing through the air. They had developed incredible technology through peaceful cooperation and scientific curiosity, but they had never needed to build anything designed to survive catastrophic failure. "Have we received any response to our distress signals?" Kesh asked, though he already knew the answer from Liss's dimming skin patterns. "Nothing on any of the standard frequencies. We are in uncharted space, far from any known trade routes. The nearest Galactic Council station is 47 days away at our current speed, and our life support systems will fail long before then." Kesh walked through the ship's corridors, past thousands of sleeping pods where Zelani families rested in artificial hibernation to conserve resources. Children who would never see their homeworld again. Elders who had lived for centuries in perfect peace. Scientists, artists, philosophers, and gardeners who had never imagined that the universe could be anything but beautiful and safe. In the communication center, Chief Signal Operator Ven was frantically adjusting transmission frequencies. "Doctor, I've tried everything. Our signals are too weak to reach the Galactic Council networks. The damaged quantum communicator can barely send messages beyond this star system." That was when Kesh remembered something from his studies of ancient galactic history. "Ven, do our systems have access to the old emergency protocols? The primitive frequencies that were used by early spacefaring civilizations?" Ven's skin patterns brightened with curiosity. "You mean the basic electromagnetic transmissions? Those haven't been used in over 1,000 years. Most species abandoned them when quantum communication was developed." "But they would travel farther, wouldn't they? And any advanced civilization would still have receivers capable of detecting them?" "Theoretically, yes. But doctor, the chance that anyone would be monitoring those old frequencies—" "Please," Kesh said simply. "We must try everything." As Ven worked to modify their communication array, neither of them knew that their decision to use ancient emergency frequencies would change the course of galactic history. 47 light-years away, Captain Zara Thorne sat in the command chair of the human deep space patrol vessel Thunder's Wrath, reviewing supply reports and wondering why humanity always seemed to draw the most boring assignments. Her ship was part of a small exploration fleet tasked with mapping the Outer Rim territories where few other species bothered to venture. It was important work, but after 16 years in the Human Defense Force, including 5 years fighting in the Centauri border wars, peacetime exploration felt almost mundane. Zara was a compact woman with short black hair and intense brown eyes that had seen too much combat for someone who had just turned 35. She had grown up on Mars Colony, where the harsh environment and constant mechanical failures had taught her to expect the worst and plan for every possible disaster. It was a mindset that had served her well in the military and continued to serve her as an exploration captain. "Captain," called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communication station, "I'm picking up something weird on the old emergency bands." "Old emergency bands?" Zara looked up from her reports. "You mean the primitive frequencies?" "Yes, ma'am. We keep receivers active for historical research purposes, but I've never seen traffic on them before. It's a distress call." Zara stood and walked over to Kim's station. On her screen, wave patterns indicated a structured transmission, clearly artificial and clearly desperate. "Can you decode it?" "Working on it now. The signal is weak, but it's definitely intelligent in origin. Wait. Got it." Kim's face went pale as the translation appeared on her screen. "Captain, it's a refugee ship. 75,000 civilians. Their systems are failing and they're stranded in deep space. Location? Approximately 18 hours at maximum burn, but Captain? Kim hesitated. But what, Lieutenant? The signal is coming from the disputed zone. That's Scarith territory. Zara felt her blood chill. The Scarith were a militaristic species that controlled a significant portion of the Outer Rim through intimidation and selective conquest. They weren't technically at war with humanity, but there had been enough incidents to make any human ship captain nervous about entering their space. Any other ships in the area? Negative, Captain. We're the closest responders by at least a week. Zara stared at the display, knowing that her next decision would define not just her career, but possibly the lives of 75,000 innocent beings. The smart military decision was to report the distress call to Fleet Command and wait for orders. By the time reinforcements arrived, whoever was in that ship would likely be dead. Commander Martinez to the bridge, she announced over the ship's comm. Rex Martinez had been Zara's executive officer for 3 years, and she trusted his judgment implicitly. He was a big man with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes that made him look more like a favorite uncle than a veteran space marine. But Zara had seen him in combat, and she knew that underneath his friendly demeanor was a tactical mind that could outthink most military computers. "What's the situation, Captain?" Rex asked as he stepped onto the bridge. Zara explained the distress call and the location. Rex studied the navigation charts and the intelligence reports on Scarith activity in the region. After several minutes, he looked up with a grim expression. "Captain, if we respond to this call, we'll be operating alone in hostile territory. The Scarith don't exactly have a reputation for respecting humanitarian missions. I know the risks, Rex, but 75,000 civilians. I'm not arguing against responding," Rex said. "I'm just making sure we both understand what we're getting into. If we're going to do this, we need to be smart about it." Zara nodded. "Alert the other ships in our patrol group. Tell them to follow at best possible speed, but not to wait for orders. Send a flash message to Fleet Command explaining the situation. And Rex?" "Yes, Captain?" "Have Chief Tanaka prep all weapons systems and run full diagnostics on our defensive capabilities. Something tells me we're going to need them." As the Thunder's Wrath changed course toward the distress signal, none of the humans aboard had any idea that they were about to make first contact with a species so peaceful that they didn't even have words for concepts like war or enemy. They couldn't know that their decision to respond to a desperate plea for help would introduce the galaxy to humanity's most defining characteristic, the absolute refusal to abandon those who needed protection. The journey to the Zelani ship took 16 hours of hard acceleration through space that was nominally controlled by the Scarith Empire. As they traveled, Zara had her communications officer monitor all frequencies for signs of Scarith military activity. What they found was troubling. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim reported during hour 14 of their journey, "I'm detecting multiple Scarith naval frequencies in the target area. It looks like they're responding to the same distress call we are." Zara felt her stomach tighten. The Scarith response to refugee situations was well documented and uniformly brutal. They would either enslave the survivors or eliminate them as unauthorized aliens in their territory. Either way, 75,000 innocent lives were about to be snuffed out unless someone intervened. "How long until we reach the distress signal?" 2 hours, 17 minutes at current speed." "And the Scarith forces?" "Based on their transmission patterns, I estimate they'll arrive approximately 45 minutes before we do." Zara closed her eyes and made a decision that would echo through galactic history. "All ahead full. Push our engines to maximum safe limits. We need to get there first." Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka's voice crackled over the comm from the engine room. "Captain, if we push the engines that hard, we'll arrive with reduced defensive capabilities. The power systems will need time to cool down and rebalance." "Noted, Chief. Do it anyway." As the Thunder's Wrath screamed through space toward an unknown species that had never experienced the brutality of the galaxy, Captain Zara Thorne began mentally preparing for what might be humanity's strangest first contact scenario. She had no way of knowing that she was about to meet a people so fundamentally different from humans that the encounter would challenge everything both species thought they knew about survival, civilization, and the nature of strength itself. In 18 hours, the galaxy would learn what happened when someone threatened innocence while humans were watching. The Scarith Empire, despite their reputation for military prowess, was about to discover why humanity had earned the nickname Deathworlders among the few species that had encountered them in combat. The universe was about to become a very different place. The storm unleashed. The Thunder's Wrath dropped out of hyperspace just as the first Scarith vessels were taking position around the dying Zalani ship. Captain Zara Thorne stood on her bridge, studying the tactical display with growing amazement and horror. The refugee vessel was unlike anything in the human databases, a graceful, organic-looking craft that seemed to grow rather than being built, its bioluminescent hull pulsing weakly like a dying heartbeat. Surrounding it were 12 Scarith warships, their angular black hulls bristling with weapon arrays that could reduce a small moon to debris. The contrast was jarring, beauty and brutality, creation and destruction, hope and despair all contained within a few cubic kilometers of space. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Kim from communications, "I'm receiving transmissions from both the refugee ship and the Scarith fleet. The aliens are calling themselves Zalani, and they're asking the Scarith for help." "Help?" Commander Martinez moved to look over Kim's shoulder at the translation readouts. "What kind of help?" "Humanitarian assistance, food, medical supplies, repair materials. They're offering to share their scientific databases in exchange for safe passage to something called New Haven Colony." Zara felt sick as she watched the Scarith response unfold on her screens. The lead Scarith vessel, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed everything else in the area, was moving into a dominant position above the Zalani ship. She had seen this formation before in intelligence briefings. It was called the submission pattern, designed to make it clear to any observer who held the power in a given situation. "What are the Scariths saying in response?" Kim's face went pale. "War Prime Drakos is demanding immediate surrender. He's informing the Zalani that they are now considered unregistered biological resources and will be processed for integration into the Scarith labor collective." "Integration," Rex spat. "They mean slavery." The main view screen crackled to life as an enormous Scarith appeared, his reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile on a creature capable of feeling joy. War Prime Drakos was over 8 feet tall, with scales like black armor and eyes that burned with predatory hunger. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who had never been denied anything he wanted. "Primitive refugees," Drakos rumbled in heavily accented galactic standard. "You will surrender your vessel immediately. Your species will serve the Scarith Empire. Resistance will result in the elimination of non-productive units." The response from the Zalani ship made Zara's heart break. Dr. Kesh Veltar appeared on screen, his lavender skin pale with fear but his voice steady with dignity. "Great Scarith leader, we are peaceful scientists and refugees. We wish no conflict with your empire. We ask only for safe passage to our new colony world. We can offer advanced research in bioharmonics, quantum agriculture, and peaceful energy generation." Drakos's laughter was like grinding metal. "Peaceful energy generation? You speak of weakness as if it were strength. Your species will learn the glory of serving those stronger than yourselves. You have 1 standard hour to prepare for boarding. Resist, and your elderly and sick will be eliminated first." The transmission cut off, leaving the Zalani ship in stunned silence. Zara could see through the long-range sensors that chaos was beginning to spread throughout the refugee vessel as 75,000 beings who had never experienced cruelty tried to process the reality of their situation. "Captain," Rex said quietly, "we need to make a decision. The Scarith haven't noticed us yet, but that won't last long." Zara studied the tactical situation. 12 Scarith warships against 1 human patrol vessel. The odds were impossible by any rational calculation, but as she watched the Zalani ship's lights dimming as their failing systems struggled to keep 75,000 innocents alive, rational calculations stopped mattering. "Open a channel to the Scarith fleet," she ordered. "Captain," Rex warned, "we're outnumbered 12-1. "I know the odds, Commander." Zara's voice carried the steel that had made her a legend during the Centauri Wars. "But there are 75,000 civilians down there who called for help. Humans don't abandon people who call for help." The main screen flickered as Zara's transmission reached the Scarith fleet. War Prime Drakos appeared again, this time with genuine curiosity in his burning eyes. "And what do we have here? Another primitive species come to beg for mercy?" "This is Captain Zara Thorne of the Human Defense Force vessel Thunder's Wrath. You are interfering with a humanitarian rescue operation. Withdraw your forces immediately." The silence that followed lasted for nearly 10 seconds before Drakos began laughing again. "Human? I'm not familiar with this species, but I count only 1 ship against my battle group. Are your people as foolish as these Zalani?" "War Prime Drakos," Zara replied, her voice deadly calm. "I'm going to explain this once. Those refugees are now under human protection. You will withdraw, or we will withdraw you." One ship, Drakos repeated, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. One small ship threatens the Scarith Empire? One human ship, Zara corrected. Trust me, there's a difference. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. Instead of the immediate attack that every tactical manual predicted, Zara ordered something that seemed like suicide. Chief Tanaka, transfer all power from weapons to engines and shields. Kim, broadcast our position and intentions on all human military frequencies. Rex, prep the Mark 7 kinetic torpedoes and load them with proximity fuses. Captain, Rex said carefully, if we disable our main weapons. We're not disabling them, Commander. We're changing the rules of engagement. The Thunder's Wrath began moving toward the Scarith formation at maximum acceleration, but instead of attacking, it headed straight for the densest part of their battle line. To every observer, including the Scarith, it looked like a suicide run. Are they insane? One of the Scarith captains transmitted to his fleet commander. Drakos was beginning to look uncertain. All ships, prepare to fire on the human vessel, but disable it if possible. I want to question their captain before we feed her to the void. That was when the Thunder's Wrath did something no Scarith had ever seen before. At the last possible moment, it didn't fire its weapons or ram the enemy ships. Instead, it released its kinetic torpedoes not at the Scarith vessels, but at the asteroid field that lay between the opposing forces. The torpedoes detonated in carefully calculated positions, sending house-sized chunks of rock flying toward the Scarith formation like a shotgun blast. The enemy ships were forced to scatter, breaking their tactical formation as they tried to avoid being crushed by flying debris, but that was only the beginning. As the Scarith struggled to regain formation, 7 more human ships dropped out of hyperspace, arriving exactly where Zara had calculated they would. The rest of her patrol group had followed her emergency beacon, and they emerged from FTL in perfect attack positions while the enemy was still recovering from the asteroid barrage. All ships, Zara broadcast on the human tactical frequency. Pattern Delta 7, these aliens think they can enslave refugees. Let's show them what humans think about that. What followed wasn't just a battle, it was a demonstration of why humanity had survived on a world that tried to kill them every day for millions of years. The human ships moved like a pack of wolves, each one supporting the others, using the disrupted asteroid field as both cover and ammunition. The Thunder's Wrath led the attack, its kinetic cannons sending projectiles that struck with the force of nuclear weapons. But it wasn't just about firepower, it was about how the humans fought. They used the gravity of nearby asteroids to slingshot around enemy ships, fired through debris fields that should have made targeting impossible, and demonstrated a level of three-dimensional thinking that left the Scarith struggling to keep up. Captain Sarah Chen of the Iron Storm showed why humans were dangerous in close combat when she used her ship's tractor beam to grab a Scarith frigate and swing it into 2 other enemy vessels like a club. The impact destroyed all 3 ships and sent shockwaves through the entire Scarith formation. Meanwhile, Commander Jake Wilson of the Starhammer demonstrated human adaptability by reprogramming his ship's mining lasers to cut through Scarith armor like it was paper. His vessel danced through the enemy formation, leaving crippled ships in its wake as it systematically disabled their weapons and engines. But it was Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka who provided the moment that would become legend. When a Scarith dreadnought tried to ram the Thunder's Wrath, she overloaded the ship's deflector array and created a localized gravity field that caught the enemy vessel and sent it spinning away into an asteroid. The massive Scarith ship crumpled like an aluminum can. Impossible, Drakos transmitted, his voice now filled with something the Scarith rarely experienced. Fear. Your ships are too small to generate that kind of power. We're humans, Zara replied as her ship cut through the Scarith formation like a blade. We've been fighting impossible odds since we learned to walk upright. The battle lasted less than 30 minutes. When it was over, 8 of the 12 Scarith warships were either destroyed or completely disabled. The remaining 4, including Drakos's flagship, were severely damaged and barely operational. Aboard the Zalani refugee ship, Dr. Kesh Veltar and his people watched in stunned amazement as beings they had never heard of fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and raw determination that defied everything they thought they knew about space combat. Dr. Veltar, whispered Navigator Liss. What are these humans? Kesh stared at the tactical display showing the aftermath of the battle. I don't know, he admitted. But they came when we called for help. When no one else would answer, they came. War Prime Drakos's final transmission was filled with rage and disbelief. This isn't over, humans. The Scarith Empire will remember this insult. We will return with greater numbers. Zara's response was calm and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. When you do, we'll be waiting, and next time we might not be in such a merciful mood. As the surviving Scarith ships limped away, broadcasting warnings about the Deathworld warriors to every listening post in the sector, Captain Zara Thorne prepared to make first contact with a species that represented everything humanity had spent millions of years learning to protect. The galaxy was about to discover that the most dangerous predators in the universe had decided to become its guardians. The New Alliance. The first human to step aboard a Zara felt her heart sink. Dr. Veltar, if there's something we've done to offend your people? No, Captain, Kesh said quickly, his markings brightening with what humans were learning to recognize as joy. We wish to stay here, in this region of space. We want to build our new colony near human territory so that we can work together, so that when other species call for help, both humans and Zalani can answer. The implications of this decision rippled through both fleets immediately. Instead of a single rescue mission, they were talking about establishing the first joint human-alien colony, a base of operations for what was rapidly becoming a new kind of galactic organization. Elder Sierra, Zara said carefully, are you certain about this? Building a colony from scratch is dangerous work, especially in uncharted space. The elderly Zalani's silver pattern shifted to what Dr. Veltar translated as determined resolution. Captain Thorne, for 3,000 years my people have lived in perfect safety, creating beautiful things and pursuing knowledge for its own sake. But today we learned that the galaxy is not safe for those who cannot protect themselves. We also learned that there are those who will risk everything to protect strangers. She gestured toward the human ships visible through the viewing port. We wish to learn from you, not just your defensive technologies, but your courage, your determination, your refusal to abandon those in need. In return, we offer our knowledge, our technologies, and our commitment to building something better than what existed before. The next few days transformed from a simple rescue mission into the foundation of galactic history. News of the Human-Zalani alliance spread across known space faster than anyone had anticipated. Species that had been hiding from aggressive neighbors began sending cautious diplomatic inquiries. Peaceful civilizations that had been paying tribute to stronger empires started asking if human protection might be available to them as well. But it wasn't just the peaceful species that took notice. 3 days after the battle, long-range sensors detected a massive Scarith fleet heading toward their position. War Commander Drakos had kept his promise to return with reinforcements. Captain, reported Lieutenant Kim, I count over 300 Scarith vessels. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding that we surrender both ourselves and the Zalani for crimes against the Empire. Zara studied the tactical display with Commander Martinez, both of them calculating odds that looked even worse than the previous battle. 300 ships against 8 human vessels and 1 badly damaged Zalani refugee ship. Rex, what do you think? I think we're about to find out if humans really are as stubborn as everyone says we are, Martinez replied grimly, because there's no way we're abandoning these people. Agreed. Send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them. Zara paused, realizing that her next words would either be remembered as humanity's finest hour or its most tragic mistake. Tell them that the Human Defense Force is formally accepting the role of galactic peacekeepers. We need immediate reinforcements. But before Kim could send the message, something unexpected happened. New contacts began appearing on the sensor display, ships dropping out of hyperspace all around the human Zalani position. For a moment, Zara feared that even more enemies had arrived. Then the identification signals began coming through. Captain, Kim said in amazement, I'm reading 47 ships from 12 different species. The Centauri Alliance, the Vegan Trade Federation, the Altarian Research Collective, they're all here. All here for what? To help, ma'am. They're responding to broadcasts about the Human-Zalani Alliance. They want to join. Dr. Veltar's voice came over the communication system from the Zalani ship. Captain Thorne, we are receiving messages of support from species across this sector. It seems that many civilizations have been waiting for someone to stand up to aggressive empires like the Scarith. Elder Sierra added her voice to the transmission. They call themselves the Cooperation Fleet. They wish to fight alongside humans and Zalani for the principle that the strong should protect the weak, not prey upon them. When War Commander Drakos arrived with his massive fleet, expecting to find a handful of human ships and helpless refugees, He instead discovered nearly 60 vessels from 15 different species, all flying a new flag that combined human, Zilani, and allied symbols into something that had never existed before: the banner of the Galactic Protection Alliance. The second battle was shorter than the first. The Scarith Empire had built their reputation on intimidating isolated, defenseless targets. When faced with a coordinated fleet of species that had decided to fight back, their tactical advantages evaporated. The human ships led the charge, their aggressive tactics and innovative weapons clearing paths through the Scarith formation. But they were supported by Centauri shield generators that could protect entire squadrons, vegan healing ships that could repair battle damage in real time, and Altarian science vessels that used gravitic weapons to tear Scarith ships apart at the molecular level. War Commander Dracos himself was forced to surrender when Captain Zara Thorn's ship disabled his flagship's engines and left him floating helplessly in space. His final transmission before being taken into custody was filled with disbelief and rage. "This is impossible," he snarled. "The strong rule the weak. It is the way of the universe." Zara's response was broadcast across every frequency, ensuring that every aggressive empire in the galaxy would hear it clearly. Maybe that was the way things worked before, Dracos. But the universe just changed. The weak aren't alone anymore. 6 months later, Captain Zara Thorn stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, the first joint colony built by the Galactic Protection Alliance. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see human industrial ships working alongside Zilani bioshapers to construct living buildings that grew directly from the asteroid's surface. Centauri energy specialists were installing power systems that would never fail, while vegan agricultural experts created hydroponic gardens that could feed millions. Dr. Kesh Veltar joined her at the window, his silver markings now permanently brightened in patterns that indicated deep contentment. "Captain Thorn, my people have a saying. From the greatest darkness comes the brightest light." 6 months ago, we were refugees fleeing our dying world, helpless and alone. Today, we are part of something that spans the galaxy. "How many member species now?" Zara asked. 47 at last count, with more requesting admission every week. The cooperation fleet now numbers over 800 ships, and we've established protection agreements with 12 major trade routes. Zara nodded, watching as a group of human children and Zilani younglings played together in the station's central park, their laughter echoing through the corridors. "Kesh, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever regret calling for help that day? Your people had never known violence, never experienced war. We brought all of that into your lives." Kesh was quiet for a long moment, his markings shifting through complex patterns of thought and memory. "Captain, my people believed that the universe was fundamentally peaceful, that intelligence naturally led to cooperation and harmony. We were wrong about that." He gestured toward the bustling station around them, where dozens of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible for any single civilization to achieve. "But we were right about something else. Intelligence does lead to cooperation and harmony. It just needs protection to flourish. You didn't bring violence into our lives, Captain Thorn. You brought hope. You showed us that there are those who will stand guard while others create beauty." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Lieutenant Kim's voice came over the station's comm system. "Captain Thorn, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Andromedan border. A species called the Lyrians is reporting attacks by something called the Void Swarm. They're requesting immediate assistance from the Protection Alliance." Zara sighed, knowing that their peaceful moment was ending. The galaxy was vast, and there would always be another crisis, another species in need of help, another group of predators that needed to be reminded that the age of unopposed aggression was over. "Dr. Veltar, it looks like we're needed again." Kesh's markings brightened with determination. "Then we will answer, Captain. All of us, together." As the cooperation fleet prepared to launch on another rescue mission, Captain Zara Thorn reflected on how much had changed since that first desperate distress call. Humanity had found its purpose in the galaxy, not as conquerors or explorers, but as guardians, and in doing so, they had discovered that the universe was full of species waiting for someone to prove that civilization was stronger than savagery. The age of galactic protection had begun, and it would endure as long as there were those willing to answer when someone called for help. In the vast darkness of space, a new kind of light was shining, the light of species that had chosen to stand together against those who would prey upon the innocent. And at the center of it all were humans, the Deathworlders who had decided that their greatest strength wasn't their ability to destroy, but their refusal to let others be destroyed. The galaxy would never be the same. Ilani vessel was Chief Engineer Yuki Tanaka, carrying a repair kit that was larger than some Zalani individuals. As she floated through the Serenity's path's graceful corridors in her environmental suit, she couldn't help but marvel at the alien ship's design. Everything was curved, organic, and beautiful, completely unlike the angular efficiency of human engineering. Dr. Veltar? Yuki's voice came through the translation device that human linguists had rapidly developed during the 2-hour journey to dock with the refugee ship. I'm Chief Engineer Tanaka. Captain Thorne sent me to assess your ship's condition. The Zalani scientist who greeted her was tall and elegant, with lavender skin marked by silver lines that seemed to shift and flow like living art. His large, gentle eyes held a mixture of gratitude and curiosity that made Yuki smile despite the serious situation. Chief Engineer Tanaka, Kesh said, his melodic voice carrying a warmth that the translation device couldn't quite capture. We are forever grateful for your intervention. Without your people's help, we would have... He paused, unable to find words for concepts his peaceful species had never needed to develop. You're safe now, Yuki said simply. That's what matters. Now, let's see what we can do about your ship. As they moved through the vessel, Yuki was amazed by the level of technology the Zalani had achieved. Their quantum resonance chambers could manipulate matter at the molecular level, their bioluminescent power systems were more efficient than anything humans had developed, and their life support systems created an environment so perfectly balanced that it felt like walking through a garden rather than a spaceship. But she was also troubled by what she saw. Every system was designed for perfect conditions, with no backup plans for catastrophic failure. There were no redundant power systems, no emergency protocols for hostile environments, no defensive capabilities whatsoever. Dr. Veltar, Yuki said carefully as they reached the main engineering section, your technology is incredible, but it's all designed for a peaceful universe. What happens when something goes wrong? Kesh's silver markings dimmed with confusion. Wrong? I don't understand. Our systems are designed to work in harmony with natural forces. Why would they stop functioning properly? Because sometimes the universe isn't harmonious, Yuki explained. Sometimes asteroids hit ships, or solar flares overload systems, or... She gestured toward the hull where Scarith weapons had left scorch marks. Sometimes bad people try to hurt good people. It was a concept so foreign to Zalani, thinking that Kesh needed several minutes to process it. His entire species had evolved on a world where the weather was always pleasant, where all life forms existed in perfect balance, where the idea of deliberate harm was literally incomprehensible. Meanwhile, aboard the Thunder's Wrath, Captain Zara Thorne was having an equally challenging conversation with the Zalani Leadership Council. She sat in her ready room with Dr. Veltar and 5 other Zalani representatives, trying to explain humanity's offer of protection and alliance. Captain Thorne, said Elder Sierra, whose advanced age was indicated by the complex silver patterns covering her entire body, we are deeply grateful for your assistance, but we must understand something. Your species possesses incredible weapons and fighting abilities. How do we know you won't become the same threat to us that the Scarith were? It was a fair question, and Zara had been expecting it. Because we made a choice, Elder Sierra. Humans evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. We could have become predators, taking what we wanted from weaker species, but we chose to become protectors instead. But why? Asked Dr. Kesh, who had joined the meeting via communication link from the engineering section. If you possess such power, why not use it for your own benefit? Zara was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that was fundamental to human nature but completely alien to a species that had never known struggle. Dr. Veltar, let me tell you about Earth. Our homeworld has weather that can kill you in minutes, diseases that can wipe out entire populations, predators that evolve specifically to hunt us, and natural disasters that can destroy entire civilizations. For millions of years, the only way humans survived was by working together. She activated a holographic display showing images from Earth's history. Humans sharing food during famines, rescuing each other from floods, fighting together against threats that could destroy them all. We learned that our strength doesn't come from being the biggest or the strongest. It comes from protecting each other. When we see someone in danger, someone calling for help, we can't ignore it. It goes against everything that makes us human. Elder Sierra's markings shifted to patterns that Kesh translated as deep contemplation. But surely there must be limits to this protection. You cannot save everyone in the galaxy. Maybe not, Zara admitted. But we can try. And we can make sure that species like yours, species that chose to develop beautiful things instead of weapons, don't get destroyed by those who chose differently. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Commander Martinez. Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across the sector. Word about the battle is spreading fast. Zara excused herself and returned to the bridge, where she found her communications officer monitoring dozens of different frequencies. Report, Lieutenant Kim. Ma'am, it's incredible. The Scarith survivors have been broadcasting warnings about humans to every military installation in their territory. But it's not just warnings. Other species are starting to transmit to us directly. What kinds of transmissions? Kim pulled up a list on her screen. Requests for assistance, mostly. A mining colony under pirate attack. A research station being threatened by raiders. A passenger liner with engine failure in hostile territory. It's like every peaceful species in this part of the galaxy heard what happened and decided to call for help. Zara stared at the list, realizing that what had started as a simple rescue mission was rapidly becoming something much larger. Humanity was being thrust into a role they had never sought but were uniquely qualified to fill, the galaxy's guardians. There's more, Captain, Kim continued. I'm also receiving transmissions from something called the Galactic Cooperation Council. They want to establish formal diplomatic contact with humanity. Over the next several hours, as human engineering teams worked to repair the Zalani ship's failing systems, an unprecedented cultural exchange began to take place. Dr. Veltar and his scientists shared their peaceful technologies with eager human researchers, while human officers explained concepts like defensive strategy, emergency protocols, and survival planning to Zalani who had never needed such knowledge. Chief Tanaka found herself becoming an unofficial ambassador as she worked alongside Zalani engineers to integrate human redundancy systems into their beautiful but fragile technology. The key, she explained to a group of fascinated Zalani technicians, is to assume that everything will eventually break and plan for what happens when it does. But that seems so pessimistic, observed Engineer Nil, whose silver markings indicated confusion and mild distress. It's not pessimistic, Yuki replied with a smile. It's prepared. When you plan for failure, you can prevent disaster. When you expect problems, you can solve them before they become catastrophic. Meanwhile, Dr. Veltar was sharing Zalani bioharmonic technology with human scientists, demonstrating how their ships could heal minor damage automatically and how their power systems worked in perfect balance with natural forces. This is incredible, breathed human physicist Dr. Elena Rodriguez as she watched the bioluminescent systems adapt and adjust to changing conditions. Your technology doesn't fight against the universe, it works with it. That is the Zalani way, Kesh explained. We believe that harmony and cooperation produce better results than conflict and competition. You're right, Dr. Rodriguez admitted. But sometimes the universe doesn't give you a choice. Sometimes you have to fight to protect that harmony. It was Captain Zara Thorne who finally put the new relationship into words during a joint meeting between human and Zalani leadership. We're different species with different strengths, she said, addressing both groups. Humans are good at surviving in hostile conditions and protecting others. Zalani are good at creating beautiful, efficient technology and maintaining peace. Together, we could build something that's stronger than either species could achieve alone. Elder Sira's markings brightened with understanding. You propose an alliance of protection and creation? I propose an alliance of friends, Zara replied. Humans will provide security and defensive knowledge. Zalani will provide advanced peaceful technology and scientific research. Together, we'll offer both to any species that chooses cooperation over conquest. The formal agreement was signed aboard the Serenity's Path 12 hours later, with representatives from both species adding their names to humanity's first interstellar treaty. But the real significance of the moment came when Dr. Veltar made an unexpected announcement. Captain Thorne, my people have decided something. We no longer wish to travel to New Haven Colony, Z.